Once you get that, you do not always, sometimes your name pops up, you don't always get credit on any of the things, productions like this. But still, I'd love to know. At least they give you this is the Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming. But I still would love to know who actually took the photograph. Because you'd be surprised at how often the awesome park rangers take the photographs. You know, they're going out with their semi-pro cameras or pro cameras. But remember, they have to juggle a lot. You know, they're in the area. They probably live either close by or potentially in the park, in housing. And they're in this environment all of the time. All right, now, this is nice and moody. Okay, now this one is somewhat purple at the top, and then it goes down, down, down. Now, I'm doing this all by eye, so I will likely make a mistake. Apologies, but, you know, it happens. And I have to decide where these little mountain ranges are. I might have to go a little further down. Because I'm basically negative painting everything. Which means I'm painting the sky first. Okay, I'm not going to be able to get everything in. And then once I've created that little line, I have to be very, very fast and get that sky all the way down to touch the outline I've created. Now, it's not always doable. Don't be worried if you can't quite get it down in time. If you get close, you've won the game. But it's really difficult to get this as close as you possibly can. So that's not bad. It's not perfect, obviously. It looks different. And then, try not to touch it. And I know there are imperfections, okay? So I'm just going to show you the imperfection. That right there, boom, boom, that's slightly different. If you want to keep working on it, you've got to decide now to do it. If you want to make this moodier or darker, this is the time you have to put that color into place. I'm a big fan of stripy skies, but the more color you add, the more challenge you're creating yourself, because once you get here, you still have to continue your new color as far down as possible to make it make sense, to connect it with your sky, with your horizon line. And I'm just now having fun by adding water. I'm okay. Remember, this is a tiny little piece. I'm okay with this being also a what? An experiment. So I've puffed in a lot of water. I'm going to get so many little cauliflowers on purpose. It's going to be okay. Just try to have fun. If you're doing this on your own, try to have some fun. And when you're adding new color in, if you're working real wet and wet, you can get away with adding a lot of pops of color, as long as you remember anything you add to your primary location of focus, you also puff in on the other zones of your with your sky. Now, this is not going to be perfect, not even close. There's a little dot here. I'm getting some, I'm having to move my paint around, or my paper around, because if I hold it like this at a drastic angle, see this puddle forming? It's not forming everywhere because I didn't add as much water to everywhere. Here, let me add a little here, softening this purple a little. Scrimbling it around a bit. Okay, see the water just kind of sits? Now, if you're very unhappy with the water, I kind of like it because it will add a glow to the top. However, it does not always work. That glow or that contrast won't always create the feeling you want. And if that's true, try this. You're whisking the color up. You're wicking. Don't wipe it because you'll end up forming a cloud. Just put the paper that you're using, just barely touching the puddle that's formed, and allow that puddle to pull into the tissue or the cotton cloth or the Kleenex or the whatever you're using. Now I am having to, you'll probably see I'm having to twist this about, so when I apply the tissue to a darkened puddle, I'm also not applying that puddle. See, it has some ink, and if I touch it to white paper, it might transfer to the paper. Just soaking up the puddles. But I'm doing it at an angle that will not affect the rest of the paint. Now, I don't have too many puddles forming anymore, and it doesn't look so drastic. It's kind of nice. So, that's that. Oh, I got pigment on it. Oh well, it happens. It's my calendar now. I'm going to have to use it. Nobody's going to want a calendar. No, I'm joking. Nobody's going to want this marred calendar. It's got a dot in it. Although I gotta say, if that happens, you know, it depends on what the calendar was made out of. Oh wow, this calendar, don't do that to this. It wipes up ink. Okay, so that's looking good. Now, how do we do this? Couple ways. Hello, New Vegas. Ooh, Halloween icon. I love it. So with this little guy, there are a couple ways. If you are enamored with the concept of dry brushing is going to be your friend here. Dry brushing for me works sometimes, and I think maybe, I want to say dry brushing is tricky for a lot of people, but I swear some people have utilized the technique so many times that their dry brushing seems to work 9 times out of 10. That is not my experience. So I will do a couple versions. For me, dry brushing, let's do a quick review on dry brushing. It is when your paper is dry. No, that's not my, wait, that's one of my phones. I'm going to hope that isn't an important phone call, but I'm a little worried it might be. So 2 things have to happen. The paper has to be dry. Your brush has to be filled with color, but it too has to be on the dry side. So as I lift color out of this, this is too wet. I can already tell. I am capable. I've filled it up with blue all the way to the deep reaches, all throughout the brush. See? soaking it up, but that is way too much liquid. So I'm going to have to waste some water and paint and soak up some of the liquid and hope it's going to be enough. I don't think this is going to be enough soaking up. And again, it's wasting some pigment. Let's see if it's better. It's a little better, but it's still pretty darn wet, damp. Now, another way to do this is to only lift up with a barely dampened brush. Go through your pigment over and over and over and again, because you're getting probably the consistency of, it's heavier than cream. Slightly heavier than cream pigment on a dry brush, which is great. It's going to be drastic. So let me check something. I don't think it's dry enough. I could be wrong. Splay out the bristles a little so it looks a little messy. Let's see if it's going to work. Ooh, it's close to being dry brush, but now it's not. I splayed out my bristles too much. Okay. The pattern isn't quite right, but it is giving me that dry brush. It's giving me too many streaks and not enough dry brush splay. Okay, let's do this instead. Is it going to be okay? Is it going to be okay? I think it's still a little too streaky. It's great for grass. Oh yeah, it's perfect for grass. Of course it is. Oh man. Of course. This is like the best grass I've ever created. Wow. So close. Oh, I'm touching my sky. Yeah, this is upsettingly wonderful for grass. I say that because, like shoreline grasses. Oh, so nice. And I say upsettingly wonderful because I'm not doing a shoreline scene right now. Okay. The best grass. Try to get your brush ready for dry brushing techniques, and then don't do it. Just make grass. Wow. Crazy. Yeah. So sad. That's not at all what I wanted to do, but it looks so good. My goodness. Okay, how did the craft shows go? Very slow, very slow. This is one of a few coming up. So last Saturday was certainly fun in its own way. And a little bit was made for the effort of being there. But I gotta say, if you're setting up and it takes, you usually have to be there about an hour or two early to set up the booth, to set up tables. So obviously, for that kind of effort, selling a handful of things is a no-go. But if you're kind of running the what's more important game, is it more important selling things or getting your name out there? So in one way it's always good because you're strengthening your name. Because if nobody knows you exist, then obviously that's a bad thing. And believe me, psychologically, it takes a while. Oop, it went away. Where? It takes a while to, yeah, yeah. It takes a while for your name, a long while, for your name to properly get out everywhere. Think of just how many times maybe you've been introduced to something. By about the first time, it's like, hey, that's so cool. You're a great group. And then you go home and you forget because you have a life. You have to juggle a bunch of other things. By the second time you see them, and it's like, it jogs your memory. Oh my God, I kind of forgot about you. If I'm being honest, I forgot. Yeah, you still exist. Okay, what do you offer again? And then you go home and you get distracted, but maybe that fuzzy little bubble of curiosity sticks with you longer. By the third time you see them at an open place, it's like, right. I was going to do something with you. I wanted to check in. And so it takes a while, 3 sometimes is a charm in that regard. So you just have to get out there and constantly send out the flyers and remind everybody, we're there for you. These are the benefits. And sometimes you also sell 1 or 2 or 3 things. And that's kind of what last Saturday was. There's another event this Saturday, so the game will continue. So in a way, it was as good as to be expected for being such a busy weekend with many, many competing events. This Saturday, not as many competing events, but now we're competing with the idea that, I think a lot of places are having trunk or treat on Friday. Wait, what? Is that about right? Trunk or treat? I think it is, but I'm losing track. Yeah, they're starting because Halloween's on a Friday, next Friday, which means the trunk or treat will have to be this weekend. Yeah, so we're competing again with some stuff. But hey, when don't you compete? When the weather gets this nice, you're asking for a lot of friends. A lot of friends, a lot of events, a lot of family fun. Okay, so I'm not quite satisfied with my dry brush. It's not entirely dry enough to be good for me. I'm also wondering if the flat brush, my particular flat brush, isn't causing me trouble. So knowing your brushes is really important. My flats are full synthetic. This is a combo, if I'm correct. It's got synthetic and some cheap hair. I don't know what creature it has or it's from. So let me see if this will give me better dry brush. Still about the same, but it is giving me better scritchy scratch application. So let's see if I can work on this one here and use the streaking to my advantage, because these are streaking left to right and a downhill slope. Okay, not doing much. I know you can barely see it. Sorry about that. Very little streaking, especially if you can't see my hand. Let's see. There we go. Very little. If I need to get it darker, I'm going to have to commit to this purple and see how much I get. Okay, that's a little nicer. looks like smudge marks, honestly. And then what other streaking can I do? There's this hill here. Okay. A little bit of streaking there. The rest will be done using a small brush. I'm just applying some dry brush pigment application so I get some under color. There's a little bit, wait. It's right here. And I was going to also say, I could use, repeating pattern, I don't like that. I could also use a sponge, but the sponge carries a lot of water to it. So I'm kind of using a combo of things here. Do I have a sponge? I could make my own sponge, maybe. Ooh, what do I have for a sponge? Nope, don't have a sponge there. Although I gotta wonder what kind of texture this would give. Let me see what kind of texture this gives. I can wash it. Oh, nice texture. This is a rubber cement kind of brush. Not brush. It is an eraser, but I'm using it as a stamp. So, what other places have a drastic amount of square shape to them? This is kind of a square shape area. So the stamp concept, whatever you're using as a stamp, if you're using a stamp, that's gonna apply a lot more pigment than dry brushing. Okay, now rinse it off because I don't want to sully my eraser too much. It's not going to soak up pigment. It's a rubber cement type material. But sometimes pigment can get trapped in the crevices, which means I would apply that. Community center thing is Thursday. They are closed on Fridays. Right. Oh, no. Okay, so sorry about that, goddess. So the next thing is a Saturday. Yeah, the Thursday, they are setting up. Yes, correct. They are closed on Fridays. They're going to do their trunk or treat thing. But this other one, the Saturday thing, is a farmer's market at the last place we did it together. So that is, I do plan on being there. I kind of signed up. They have a weird sign up. You just email. I mean, I didn't even email them. I asked if I should email them. I reached out via social media. So there's always the possibility that I get there and I say I added my name to the list, and they said, cool, see you there. But there was no other thing past supposedly I'm added to a list. I didn't get any confirmation. Hopefully I'm there. Okay, so now I've got this brush and this picture. So now that there's ink, there's pigment on this, I could start creating sweeps and connecting. I want to maintain a lot of white because this is very snow covered. These are snow covered mountains. But wherever the rocks are too steep, there's no snow, right? And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm now adding shapes to these dark areas. And some of the shapes are going to be like box form. And some are, putting your abstract cap on. Because it's tricky knowing just how much you can get away with here. I'm only focusing on this. By the way, there should be an ad coming up in about 1.5 minutes, depending on when it starts for you. It's sharing that an ad starts for me in 42 seconds. Whether that's true, I'm not sure. I think it has been about 40 minutes, so Goddess, you are right. They threw out a little 2-minute, 2.5 minute ad about 10 minutes into the stream, 10 to 20 minutes, and now they waited roughly 40 minutes. So I will keep dabbling a little. I'll probably get up, expect a 2-minute break, stretch, get your drink. I'm going to keep working on this, but slowly. But yeah, take this opportunity to move around. I will try not to chat too much. Okay, see you in about 3 minutes. Okay, maybe I should do my best to at least drink something. Tea. And for anybody that is subscribing, I can chatter away as well while I'm weirdly stretching my legs. Yeah, I got all sorts of stuff going on because there's that little guy. Just a one-day farmers market. We'll see if they actually have farmers there. That sounded silly. It conflicts. Okay, ad break now. It's a 3-minute ad break. I'm not positive I've seen much social media about it. So I'm going to do some stretching. And I'm going to look at their social media feed and see if anything popped up. Sorry, baby. Okay. Nice. All right. Ooh, I just got an email. Okay. Always good to stretch. Oopsie. Okay, social media. I think their only social media is through Facebook. Yeah. I wish they had their local track thing. I don't see what our local one is. All right, we've got about 1.5 minutes. I will step away for a brief moment. Sorry, baby. You can come in if you want. you back, baby. You're back. All right. Oh, welcome back to me and to everybody else. Okay, I couldn't find their social media posts, sadly. But I did get a refill on my water. Where did I put my glasses? Well, I don't need them. All right, so let me zoom in just a little because you do not necessarily need to see my surroundings. You probably need to see the picture itself a little more. Whoa. Okay, apply, okay, and okay. So it's a little better. It might be too much, and I apologize for that, but I just have to remember to skitter. So I've got this just barely showing. It's not very important, but hey, whatever, it's fine. This one is almost all in shadow. So let's get this going. I'm going to use some of my gray color I already had created. And I am sticking with, this is a very this thing I'm working off of, very much purples, cool colors. There's hints of green that I can just barely make out. I mean, it's there. There's green down here. There's some warm oranges right here where the sun is really touching this full on. There's hints of warmth in this snow capped section of the hill, but then everything else is very cool. And even this right here looks more purple than, say, this. Very blue. This is purples, purples, purples and blues, warm orange, warm oranges, even in the snow, and then blue again. So I've loaded my brush up with some blue. I should probably make it a little wetter because it's not flowing off my brush very well. And again, think of this as abstract because so much of this is going to be just shapes and lines as you hope it starts looking like rocks. Shapes, lines, textures. It's less obvious what you're doing here. Okay, and remember, there's a power in negative painting because you have to make sense of the fact that this here, and maybe, no, that's the background. This hump right here is in front of this cone shape, but this here is in front of, barely, this cone is in front of this cone. And if you want to break it down even further, this sliver, this kind of rectangle, is in front of this cone, which is in front of this cone, which is in front of that cone. You get what I mean? I'm starting to try to make sense of the layers. And it's good to make sense of these layers. I missed some chatter. Okay. Oh, do I? Oh, I fell behind. Community center. Okay. Goddess Whispers asked, do you have a personal account on Blue Sky? Is this directed at me, Goddess? I assume it is. I think I do, but I tried to log in the other day and I failed at remembering anything. So I'm going to have to get back to you. I can make one. If I don't have one already, then it's just because I messed up and didn't finish the account setup. And then GM shared, isn't there a thing Saturday at the old library? I think one of our knitters is selling stuff at that one. Is that this coming Saturday? There is a thing, but I don't know. Oh, yeah. So GM, I'm gonna have to check on that because as far as I know, this upcoming Saturday was, or Friday? I don't know, whichever, was dedicated to their version of a trunk or treat. Whether it's going to morph over into the old library, I have no idea. I have not heard about the old library. I love the old library. So, of course, if there's something going on there, I am completely out of the loop, which isn't hard to do. And then your next question, I did not understand Tractor Supply having a farmer's market with no farmers selling their goods. I know, right? I mean, they made good with the day because they had animals. The people that did come were the, oh no, what are they called? The kids who care for animals. I cannot recall their name. It's an organization. It is a very dedicated group, and you learn how to care for, sell animals once they become mature enough, and maybe even train them. It really depends, like train them to go in and out of um the pens and things like that. Yes, exactly. 4-H. Yes. So they had all of their 4-H kiddos and the animals they bring in, or they care for at least. So do their thing. And it sounded like the farmers, they had a lot of maybe find out that they had a conflict. There weren't a lot of, maybe there were 10 to 20 people that flat out did not come without telling them. You know what I mean? You're supposed to say, hey, I can't make it. And they had a lot of dropouts for that day. They had a lot signed up, so it seemed like all was well. And then all was not well with all the dropouts. So that's too bad. But it was a fun event, so they decided to try it another time. And it just so happens to be set for this Saturday. So I'm going to be there, and if I find out that something happened to my, sounds like it feels like I'm saying if something happened to my invite, but my sign up, then I'll have that day free. But chances are I will be there marketing the art group and the workshops. All right, now there's a lot more streaking here, which is crazy looking. Oh, right now the dry brushing works. Okay, what? I need several of these. Okay, so this is probably the least interesting process to watch, but it is also, I kind of want to make sure that people see it happen because it's fun building these patterns up. You can get lost in it. It almost starts to become stress relief, like doodling is stress relief. The tricky part is remembering to reference your original piece, your photo that you're working off of, and making sense of it that way. But a lot of these shapes that I'm creating are circles, lines, little triangles. I just want to make sure everybody sees this build because it doesn't have to be perfect and you still get the idea that this has to be snow. This has to be rocks and shadows and all sorts of things. So it's kind of fun to make sure everybody can watch it, even though I personally think this has got to be weird watching. It's a weird process that I'm going through here. And then we'll skitter this out a little, because this starts to become lines in its own right as well. And then I want to say there were a lot of repeating dashes. I'm referring to these right here. See these repeating dashes. And then this got a little fatter here. So you can kind of tell that if you can get apply some patterns using dry brush technique, or a little bit utilize your favorite sponge, your sea sponge, something with blocky texture or dots on it. If you can apply some textures in a few spots, it helps you imagine the rest that you will apply using the rest of the shapes you'll be applying and strengthening using your brush. But this is building. It's nice. You can kind of see it starting to come together. What I need to do before I forget, though, is grab some of this. Gosh, I think it's still called Indian red. There's an Indian yellow and there's an Indian red. It's kind of like a very vibrant burnt sienna, but it's bright. I need to do this part. And this has a lot of texture on it, but it also has a touch of orange in it, which this isn't quite going to, it's not going to do justice to the orange part. Okay, I'm going to have to introduce some orange by grabbing it. I really do want this orange. Is it necessary? No. So if you don't want to put in two colors up here, do not. Because this should be fun, and mixing colors is not always the easiest or the most fun thing to jump into. Oop, I'm going to wet down my brush a little so some of this peels in. And then there's boop, 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 boop. I'm just adding some dots. And then I'm going to do that. And I know I've just created all these odd little shapes, which I'm going to cut away. And then there's this. This is not as warm. It doesn't actually have to be here. Okay. That's pretty nice. And then there's a little bit here, which I should make reference to, but I'm not going to do as much detail here. I'm going to try to utilize dry brushing by scraping along the side through the snow. Very little. And was there any other place where some warmth was had? There's a little over here, so I will dry brush just a little. Not too much. Not too much. This will work. Okay. It's coming along. Yeah, slowly but surely it's coming along. Okay, I missed some chat. Okay. Gotta shared in answer to GM. It's a nationwide thing for the chain. We just already have so many farmers markets here, so the one here is just a craft fair. Yeah, what's hilarious though, yeah, I know, GM. That is kind of too bad. But it's funny because they're marketing still pushes the farmer's market side, which means they're hoping that they get somebody to sign up, because if the ad says that there's a farmer's market, maybe somebody will bring fruits and veggies type fare. So I think they're still hoping to get some reaction to their marketing. But yeah, what they sent us to share out was very similar. Wait, did they send it this time? I cannot remember, but it still pushes. I'll check. I'll see if they sent me anything new, because like I said, this sign up process was a little less defined than the last one. All right, now I know I have a lot of work to do on this side, especially when it comes to making sure this cuts up into the sky and looks like it cuts through. Negative painting again. This little guy. So strengthen the hillside right there. Because this is important. Every hill behind another hill or mountain is one of the more important things to focus on, because it's going to define the shape of the one in front of it. There's a lot going on in tiny textures here. And you may just have to make sure to think about this as little abstracts. So shapes and lines. Dots, shapes, and lines to define this. Because the distance is so far that you're not seeing much detail back there. And because of that, you shouldn't be putting much detail in either. Little peak, little strange peak. I think I overdid my peak here. I did. That's okay. But it looks kind of cute. It's very, very strange looking, but it's adorable. So I'm okay with it. All right, and then this one is in complete shadow. So, and then this one. And then there's a shadow here, a cool shadow here. And then a cool shadow here. Whoop. Which, it's cool, but it's also got purple in it, so I better bring in that purple. Okay, I already did that one. But now I gotta strengthen these. Okay, and then there's this. Sometimes I get lost in shapes. There's a little S curve here, which is interesting, but I gotta be careful how I define it, because I shouldn't need to put in too much detail. It's about the whole piece, not just the fun shapes I can introduce. But you get so, I get so locked into shapes that once I've decided to create shapes, I'm like, then there's a circle, then there's a V, then there's funny squiggles. There's not much going on here, but there's like a little zigzag of white here. What are some cool shapes we can focus on? That's what you should be focused on when creating this, because otherwise you get lost and you start putting contradictory textures in, because I know I do. So I just assume everybody else does. Okay. Okay, that's going to work. Now, I need to start putting in some trees. This is a good start to this. But I think now I should come up with my tree line, which for me, this is one of the easier things to do because I like trees. But my tree line is only going to be an inch in height because this is so much smaller than this piece. This tree line here is pretty large compared to the white, plain white snow here. My plain white snow is going to be here, which means I think I can get away with pre-wetting my area, not my snow line. I'm not going to pre-wet my snow line. I'm going to pre-wet this bottom area, and I'm going to shutter it a little. And then some places I'll keep straight because the snow is straight. And then there are zones where the snow and the trees are intermingled, maybe? You can barely see it. It's not important necessarily because here, let me do this. It's going to go this high. Okay. It's not important necessarily because, again, this is a much smaller version of this calendar that I'm working off of. Okay, I'm just giving it enough water because I want to bring in my brush with its indigo blue and some, what is this, hunter's green. And I want to get enough water that this will start bouncing around. All right, I'm going to work from bottom. Here's one tree. Here's another tree. Okay. All right, now, they're very dark trees, maybe too dark. But this is just the start of my trees. And again, this is where your first line is rather important because it's defining via using this concept of negative painting. This defines the shape of my snow line. And some of these trees are cutting into the snow hill that we see. And this is also when you can start creating little mounds, subtle mounds. It's not perfectly straight. Now I can get some more hunter's green. But I do want overwhelmingly blue in some of this too, because I'm countering the blue I put in here. I'm continuing that cool feel. So these initial trees, let's stick with the greens I need. The base is always thicker than the top, but there's so much tree that aren't being touched by light that most of them are basically in the same amount of shadow. I'm gonna spill in some blues here. All right, now that I've got that, now, I'm covering some of my color I need. Now I can start making the using the same liner brush or the same script brush, I can start making the details for my trees. And there are a few trees that are detailed. There really are. But it's still damp. So whatever I do, I'm just streaking in the details. And I've got to remember that I have multiple colors I could be using. Now, you can cheat. You can totally cheat here. You can start loading up your script, because again, this is a small script brush. It's very tiny. You can load up your brush and start putting your tree in and zigzagging, or thinking of it as telephone poles. So small line, and then line, vertical, okay, small vertical line, and then horizontal, 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 horizontal. Very cheating tree, because it's, these trees are so far away that the details can be simplified to just lines and blocks of color. Squiggles of color. There, see how it's working. See? Oop. It's kind of cool. And don't forget to hint in. I'm using indigo there, but don't forget to hint in your hunter's green or whatever dark green you've created for yourself. And don't forget to hint in some blue as well. That's just to add continuity across the board. Look how ridiculously childish that tree is. And it's going to end up being great because multiples in different colors next door to each other of that kind of vertical, single vertical line, and then squiggle, squiggle, squiggle down like a bottle brush, is going to create just what you need to make it look like trees in the distance. So when it comes to trees, I fall into funland. I need some more blue tree. And anything, while this is still wet, some of these trees are going to bleed into each other, and they're just going to look so beautiful. And make sure you don't pull your tree all the way down to the base, because some of those highlights are going to look real nice. Just place your tree and let it sift into these colors. So there's highlights left behind because the paper's still barely damp there. If it starts drying up too fast for you, you could always take some fresh water and re-dampen this whole zone, because there's magic when you apply thick paint to this, to damp paper. And the moment that dampness goes away, you're losing some of the magic. So gently apply a little more water in there. And then change up your color as you're going along. Always pull in more colors. Now it gets pretty thick over here, so I can start growing these bigger. Now, if you are worried about these puffy trees, these aspens or whatever, I don't think they're well, I'm going to call them aspens. The trees that are, these are kind of like pines and things like that. And then you've got trees over here that have lost their leaves. They look beautiful. Oh, Grand Teton. No, never mind. Yeah, they could be aspens. Anyway, so these little guys have lost their leaves. So they're just a bunch of branches. And they've got snow clinging to them. If you really want those, that's fine. I would probably suggest putting some white while you're working with this. I'm going to actually leave them out because I'm working so tiny that I don't have as much paper to do these 1, 2, 3 puffy trees justice. I can't do them justice when they're only going to be half an inch in diameter. Diameter? Yeah. Now, I could turn this into a puffy tree by creating trees around it, I guess. Yeah, that could work. But again, don't feel like you're obligated to recreating everything on this picture. If it starts driving you crazy, just ignore it. You're trying to do something justice, and it's the feeling of this mountain range. It's the feeling of that snow clinging to the ridge. It's just so beautiful. Not everything has to be recreated, redefined. Okay, scritchy, scritchy, scritchy. Whoops, sorry, I'm off screen. And really, I'm just trying to place these on here to demonstrate how simple it could be to create distant trees. And please note how scratchy I'm making these trees. I think this is quite lovely. What I'm not doing, I'm going to do one. Oh, pull the camera back. Yes, sorry about that, GM. I'm going to do one tree that follows what I see a lot of people. There we go. Okay. Apply. And okay. And okay. Sorry about that. And I might as well. I like how real life your painting looks. You're doing it all. Thank you, New Vegas. That's very kind of you. So one thing I want to make sure people kind of break away from, and if you don't fall into this bucket, then completely ignore what I'm saying. But I find a lot of us fall into this bucket. I do too. So you're not alone. We make a Christmas tree. And it has to go like this, 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 this. And it's cute. 1 or 2 Christmas trees like this. Totally great. It's hard to see, but like that's what I'm talking about. The classic Christmas tree shape where it's the branches are equidistant from each other, and you create this bow shape that always drops down, falls down. Now, what kind of Christmas tree is that? I don't really know. There are so many different types. What I'm doing is less about that and more that one's fine, because now I can give it a buddy and go randomly scritchy scratch around it right next to it. And now it has variety. There's a lot of variety in these trees, and really they're just squiggles. You could even get away with this for one of the trees. I know that looks ridiculous, that little wiggle line, but if I put that next to another tree form in Hunter's Green with just lines all the way through, so that's another one. It's the variety of textures that ends up helping this whole scene. I'm trying to get this color way over here. Oop, my Christmas tree kind of disappeared. So I am building these trees. This already has a very solid amount of trees here. I'm jumping over here and it's not quite done, but I am trying to use this moment to share the fact that these trees are not repeats of one another. I'm trying very hard to remind myself to make each tree a slightly different squiggle pattern. It usually starts out with a vertical line that I want to work with, but then I just create, think of lightning. We had a nice lightning storm yesterday. That was a fun evening, a fun way to end the day. Hopefully it wasn't too scary. I know that dogs don't always love it. But lightning patterns, when you're staring, if you get to stare out an open window, then you have quite a show. It zigzags down the sky, and it's frightening and amazing. Okay, but I'm definitely avoiding making Christmas trees. Sometimes I make dots. Sometimes I just make vertical lines, especially with a script brush like this. I can absolutely get away with a few simple vertical lines. Now, they won't always work, but I'll zoom in real quick to show you what the vertical lines look like. That is kind of cool. The vertical lines from far away. It looks interesting. I shouldn't have touched my board right there. Whoopsie. What happens when you touch a little bit of pigment to what should be snow? Mistakes ensue. So I'm trying to pull up some of that pigment before it stabilizes. I am gently using my scrubber. This paper does not do well with too much scrubbing, so take that into mind. Okay, there we go. So this is just a gentle scene. I need a few more trees. Let me put on my glasses. Ad starts in 2 minutes again. That's not been 40 minutes, has it? Since the last ad break? Oh well, it doesn't matter. Sitting here watching you paint this beautiful mountain scene is amazing. Aww, GM, you are very kind. Thank you. This is fun though. If you get a chance to try your hand at it, keep it on something small so you're not committing to too much time. This can always work into a much bigger piece, like an 8x10 or bigger, but know that if you go bigger, your tools have to go bigger. This is easy if you've picked up just a simple script brush from a set at one of our box stores, Walmart's, Targets, whatever it may be. They usually have one script brush in there, and they will suit you well. And then some of these can be thickened. And if you don't want to fleck the ones like this, dot, 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 in a row, you can also pretend they're like mini grasses. But I have found, for me personally, the patterns become a little too lined if I create them like this. They're very repeated. I'm not good at making straight lines like this. And then, but you might be better at this than me. Then I make a few dots at the bottom so that when I pull some detail up, then I can get that variety back. Each tree should have a little depth to it. It doesn't have to be absolutely big depth, big thickness everywhere. Oop, I ran out of... Okay, so it looks like there's going to be another ad break. I'm pretty sure that breaks the rule of my no more ad breaks than one every 40 minutes thing. But hey, whatever. Maybe it's been longer. What time is it? Ooh, it is getting late. So we'll come back from the ad break. We'll try to do same. Oh, New Vegas, same here. I really enjoy the photorealism of the painting. Aw. When we get back from the ad break, we'll jump into the snow. But 2 to 3 minute ad, I think. Okay, let's see. That wasn't my coffee, that was my tea. Okay. All right, and for anyone who is still getting info or who have subscribed or who have been gifted a subscription, I know you're still listening and wondering, why isn't she taking a break? Sadly, I've got all of my stuff. I've got my drinks. I've got my phones near me. So yeah, do little stretches. It's shocking. It's almost been 3 hours. So I suppose the last 40 minutes just kind of whizzed by without me realizing. How quickly time does fly, which is probably a good time to start finishing this up. We can focus on, we'll pull the other piece back in. So we'll put that there for a minute. There's very little to do on this one, except details. But that would give me a little time to work with my people for the rest of the afternoon. Okay. Sweet. Okay. Looks like if it's true to its word, the notification came back that the community is active again. Little review on this, it's fully dry and I think it's looking good. These lightened up drastically. Remember, watercolor, I still don't have the exact true how much it lightens percentage wise. I keep forgetting to look this up, and if it's even calculatable. I'm sure it is, but it depends on brands. pigment brands and everything. So I'm saying at least 10%, but I sometimes, yes, exactly. That is one scary little pumpkin. My goodness, it looks like Chucky's face. So anyway, yeah, I would say the percentage that it dries depends heavily on strength of pigment, brand of pigment, because that tends to affect strength. But anyway, this lightened up a lot and it still looks good. I think, if anything, if I really want to bother it, and I just don't know if I do, the depth of dark I could apply here could be one step up, because the bottom is so dark, it's starting to look like it's actually floating from the bottom. So if that darkness obscures the bottom of one of these segments of the pumpkin, you have successfully glued it, kind of, to the bottom of the picture. But anyway, it looks good. I don't know if I'll touch it. There's the what could be done to make this even more realistic, and what should be done. Two very different things. Because what could be done is a lot. What should be done depends on you and your interest in tweaking a picture you've created. So, to finish this up, this snow capture for this photograph, it doesn't have a very interesting hilled. This is like one straight groundscape. There's very little interest in it. There's no hills. Hey, babe, don't leave. Come here. Come here, baby. You want a treat? Good job. Okay. I probably should give her a treat now that I promised her a treat. So bear with me. There you go, baby. Oh my. She absolutely caught that. Okay, so not a very interesting ground, which means there's not a lot to work off of. It just looks stripy. Now, is that an effect of the camera, or is that because there is subtle rivulets in the ground? It actually could be both, but I think, it's a little bit of both issues. The camera didn't pick up a ton of detail in this snow, but it looks weird. It looks like the snow was raked. And I know that sounds silly. Aw, Dougie loves treats. Yes, she does. She does. But because it's the streaks of subtle shadowing get smaller and smaller as you get over here, I think this is almost true to form, but it's so gentle. So, how do we make our plain scene have those streaks? One question you should ask yourself: does your scene need streaks? And if you think it does, then barely load a little bit of color onto your liner brush or whatever brush you're comfortable with, and see if you can add a little bit of blue. Now, I am very hesitant. There we go. There, I got one line here. Ooh! I can tell I'm very, very hesitant with my streaks. There we go. And it's all very up to you whether you put in any streaking. And then once you've put in a few streaks into your snow, you can take a bigger brush. Make sure it doesn't have color in it. Make double certain you're not applying new color, and soften some of those streaks up, because with a bigger brush loaded with some water, now you can really streak by, soften. And remember, this snow is supposed to be patterned left to right. You know what I mean? If you're making textures, you can put textures in your snow, but what are the textures representing? It's probably representing subtle shadows. And this is a flat ground that we're representing. So all of these streaks, all of the snow shadows should be horizontal. Left to right, fairly flat. Now, if this was more interesting and a very hilly snow scene, then you can make shadows cast along the hills. But I don't have hills in this scene. Now, you can always put in hills if you don't like what's coming out. If I put in hills, once I put them down, they're gonna be stuck there. So I gotta be careful. I have to really decide, do I want a hill? Here, let me dry this just a little. There. If I want a hill, remember that you are going to lay in the color where the back hill is shadowed and falling behind the front hill. Like that. And then I can load my brush up again and maybe put another one here, disappearing into nothing. And remember, you're going to soften only one side, and that's the side that draws up into the hill you've put feet on. I know that sounds funny. I'm going to say it like that because that's how I imagine it. So you've got a hill, and just think of a series of hills. You have this hill in front of this hill. You only shadow the back hill. This hill is still completely in sunlight. Not much sunlight. There's not a lot of sun that I can see cast. In fact, this is completely in shade. That snow land that we're seeing, it's flat and there's no sun touching it. There's only sun touching the mountain up here. That's why you can see so much variety. We got nothing down here. So we are inventing hills and what was once and should be flat land. But again, if you just can't abide by the flatness of that field, that's fine. Put in a hill. It's your picture. This is representing Grand Teton National Park. And now you're putting in a few little details that make you happy. There. Now, I know it's not much at all, but it's a little something. Now, the last thing you could consider doing, and I'm going to do this because I can't help it. I can't help it. I keep mentioning that I do this, and it's true that I do. If I'm going to add in any kind of hill or foreground element, I'm going to be drawn to making certain there's a tiny amount of my brain stopped working, sorry about that, tiny amount of framing. So at least you know I am consistent. All right, so that's a very drastic amount of framing there, and not much there, but it's still pretty dark. It's too wet though, so I gotta take some of it out. Okay, that's much better. That's not going to go away because it is the edge of the paper less sizing, and I'm going to round it out with some water. I'm going to keep cleaning it up because there's a lot of pigment that's coming up. And then I'll leave a little bit of a highlight, right there. There. I just strengthened this hill, left a solid white highlight, pale highlight, right here. And I could strengthen the shadowing here. Maybe use a similar color. It's going to be too much. Don't worry. I know. I need more water because this is no longer very active. There we go. Okay. There we go. Really very subtle suggestions. Not much of anything. And you don't need much of anything. I suppose one cute thing I could add in, a little bit of snowdrift here. I am now adding things that don't exist. So bear with me. I'm adding interest that isn't in the actual photo. It is up to you completely to try that out. And is this because the photo lacks something, or is this because my imagination is a little too almost too bored with the scene? Anything could be true. But just know you can do your own thing. That's kind of cool. Look, it looks like the snow is now very thick on this side. I could add a little more. Remember, these are things that don't have to be placed in your piece. This is stuff that does not exist, so please keep that in mind. Only do what makes you comfortable. Okay, that's looking good. And I think I should call it quits while I'm ahead and while I'm not going to ruin anything. Because listen, I cannot do much damage with the pale blue I'm working with, but I might change the scene a little more than I mean to. Because right now, it is a simple winter scene based off of a photo that somebody took. And it's perfect. It was perfectly fine before. But hey, those little rifts in the snow are kind of fun. And I think it's good. Is this done? Not quite. There are always things I can add. I do want to finish up the scratchy details. Add a few in. Shade some of these. Notice. See this right here? It's a subtle pink. There is a big difference between that peachy white right here and this darker purpley pink white right here. I need to make use of glazing, very soft amount of glaze in thick pads. So utilizing a brush like this and then filling the brush up with, say, this pink. I've got some pink pre-made. This is very damp. So let me take out some of the water. There we go. So with this in mind, I need to create, where are they? I got to look at the piece while I'm doing it. I need to create shadows. Maybe a shadow here. I'm just scraping the shadows in place. And there's, load up with pink again. There is a shadow that cuts through here and a shadow here. Sure, I'll do that. And then a block shadow here and here. Now the pink got a little strong on me, but I think it'll be fine. Now, on this side, it's not pink, it's more of a blue. But it's still very watery. It's a little bit more, oop, too blue. Let's see if that'll do. Shadow, shadow. I'm just dotting some things in. Anything else? I'm adding tucks of different color through here. Oop, I picked up some green. So if you see that you picked up a color, an alien color, don't fret, but just don't take that alien color and then go back over here. I think this is good. I think this will suffice. And I think for my purposes on this day, coming into hour 3, and I usually don't go past hour 3, I should call it quits. The details that come will be of dry brush quality, kind of like what I'm doing now. And maybe a few here because the pink is beautiful looking, but I can dry brush some subtle blues. That is pretty darn cool. I like it. I'd probably sign either here or here. If you're ever signing your piece, this may just be me. I think I have been unknowingly trained by how many signatures I've seen. People tend to sign on the opposite corner that the strength of detail and dark color is, because your signature is a bit of an intrusive element, or think of it